the intro might have been slightly over the top, but anyhow, on with the story. G'day to everyone. Today I've returned to a farm to do some more detecting with my E-Trac. I've been here a couple of times before and I've done fairly well, so hopefully I'll do okay today too. Today I was thinking I might head over there near the middle of the paddock where there's a few old stones, which was obviously the site of an old house or building of some sort, because last time I was here that's where I got my best coins. But somehow I got sidetracked and took the scenic route around the paddock just to see what I might find. And the first signal for the day is this buckle. Followed closely by this wavy looking button. And I eventually ended up down near the river. Perhaps some fishermen might have dropped something on the bank here. And they did, because here's my first coin for the day. Looks like an old Aussie pre-decimal sixpence. And right next to it, here's another coin. This looks like an old shilling. And the date looks like 1931. It's a nice spot here down near the river. Continuing dry weather means that the river is now just a series of water holes. Okay, heading back across the paddock. And here's a musket ball. I'm not sure what sort of gun would have shot these, but with the weight of them, I'm sure the range was very limited. Aha, a little silver coin. Looks like a Victorian sixpence. Unfortunately, it looks as though I just nicked it with a spade. And from deep in the bone dry sandy soil, out came this copper coin. Actually, I think it's a token. Ah, one of those Parker ones from Geelong. That's about the commonest token you'll find around here. Getting closer to the site of the old ruins now, and you can notice much more junk in the ground. And here's an old padlock. Ah, the old iron ring giving a good signal trick. With so much iron in the ground, I thought it might be a good chance to try a two-tone ferrous on the E-Trac. Still got a few iffy signals though. And here's an Aussie pre-decimal penny. I think the date is 1916. And a good signal right near the stones, and it's just an old brass ring. And here's a button, and here's a spider. Just dug this old teaspoon. As the noisy cockies fly over. iffy signal. To dig or not to dig? That is the question. In this case, it turned out to be just another button. And here's a rather fancy looking furniture fitting. Well, so far today I've dug up spiders and centipedes, but to top it all off, looks like I've just found a baby snake. He seems very quiet, so I reckon he might be in hibernation mode with the cooler weather we're having now. Okay, little fella, out you go. I was just remembering the story that the farm worker told me of a large vicious snake that he found about 100 metres away from here when he was digging near a dam bank. After all that excitement, I only found a piece of lead in that hole. But the next signal produced this kangaroo penny. And right next to the stones where the ruins were, I haven't found one of these for ages. Yes, it's a Chinese coin. And here's another addition to my growing collection of buttons. And it looks like I've just found a brace buckle. And here's an unusual dog's head button. Can't say I've come across one of these before. I've just found another Victorian sixpence. Unfortunately in pretty poor condition, so I can't really make out any date on it. Okay, I'm gradually on my way back to the ute for some lunch. And here's a 1926 Australian halfpenny. Closely followed by a threepence. And another one, dated 1942. Okay, lunch is over and back out into it. First up, here's a kangaroo penny. Ah, some more silver. Here's a nice little 1922 threepence. Aha, I spied down the bottom of this hole a big copper coin. I'd say it was an old English penny. It's well worn, so I can't really make out much detail on it. This looks like a 1948 Aussie sixpence. Interesting that there's a mixture of Aussie pre-decimals and older coins here, as the pre-decimals would have been dropped in the days when this was a sports oval. And another threepence, 1944 this time. And yet another Vicky sixpence. I think that's the third for today. Here's a brass scallop shell, possibly part of an old brooch, I'd say. Aha, this looks like another token. I like finding these. Nice little slices of Australian history. And here's what looks like a very well worn Vicky penny. And now for something different. This looks like an old brooch. Unfortunately it's a bit damaged, but not too bad I guess. Well, it's getting late in the afternoon and one last find for the day. And it turned out to be an Aussie sixpence. Oh well, it's about time to go home now. So let's move on to a review of today's finds. For those of you that think I only dig good stuff, here's a part of the rubbish that I found today. No wonder I feel weary after digging all those holes. I suppose like all of us, I'm not as young as I used to be. And here's the stuff that's a bit better. I ended up with quite a little collection of buttons. Also a few buckles, a couple of brooches and so on. I noticed that some of the buttons were made by Gardner & Co. of Bristol. As far as the buttons are concerned, this was the star of the show, the dog's head button. Here's another look at the slightly damaged brooch. I'm not sure what age it might be, it could be Victorian, but I don't really know. And here's the shell brooch, or possibly a belt clasp, but I'm not really sure. So for today I ended up with a dozen Aussie pre-decimals, dating from 1916 to 1951. Now on to the older coins. This big old worn English penny, I reckon might be from George IV, and that would date in the 1820s. When I looked on the internet I found that the monarchs each side of him, George III and William IV, were facing the right on their coins, whereas George IV, he faces to the left on his coins. And here's the old Chinese coin. Lots of Chinese came out to Australia during the gold rush years, but some of them stayed on later, and there's lots of towns around the area that used to have Chinese market gardens. So I ended up with 3 Victorian sixpences for the day. One dated 1844, another one 1864, and the other one I just can't quite make out the date because it's just a bit too worn. And the worn Victorian penny, I reckon it might be dated 1860 something. The first token I found was from Parker's Ironmongers of Geelong. Throughout the years that I've been detecting I've found a few of these, but this one's in by far the best condition. Very recently I've read a magazine article about these tokens, and apparently Parker's old stone building still stands in Geelong to this very day. The second token I've found today has exactly the same design on one side as what was on the first token. This standing figure apparently represents justice. But when I cleaned the other side I found that it was a William Bateman Jr. and Company, importers and general merchants from Warrnambool. Warrnambool spelt with 1 R instead of 2 like it is today, so I don't know if it was just spelt that way years ago or if that was actually a spelling mistake. There's actually a bit of a story behind these, and it's on the internet if anybody's interested to look it up. But just very briefly, these tokens were issued in 1855, and in 1856 Bateman's store was burnt to the ground and all the remaining tokens were destroyed in that fire. So as a result, there's very few of these tokens around, and I reckon I might have found myself a bit of a rarity here. So all up today, I've come home with 20 coins and tokens. So I've had a good day and I'm quite happy with that. Okay, well that's about all for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll say goodbye to you all.